Coming up, Luka gets the best of Giannis as superstars collide in Milwaukee, and plenty of teams are in the mix for the postseason. This is Locked On Now NBA.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Now NBA, local experts on the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. We've got a whole bunch of games from Sunday, and we're going to kick things off with our Locked On NBA hosts, but we will start with Luka Doncic, who did absolutely everything for the Mavs to help them beat the Bucks in last night's biggest game.
The biggest game.
Two of the biggest stars went head-to-head in Milwaukee on Sunday. Luka Doncic got the better of Giannis and the Bucks as the Mavericks got a much-needed win. Locked On Mavs tells you how Luka took over and beat the defending champs.
The Dallas Mavericks take down the Milwaukee Bucks. Nick Engstead from the Locked On Mavericks podcast here. And Luka Doncic was absolutely sensational in this game, racking up 15 assists. He could just do anything on the court. He had every single option available to him. If he wanted to go to the rim, he had floaters, he had some layups, he had his three ball going a little bit. But the passing was just absolutely amazing. Passing out a lot of double teams, passing out of traps, all kinds of players that he was hitting for threes, for dunks. Dwight Powell and him had a connection that was just unlike anything we have seen this season. Dwight Powell was incredible. 22 points, 13 boards as the starting center, and he did a really good job against one of the best front lines in the NBA of Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Bobby Portis coming off the bench. Maxi Kleber was not playing, so Dwight Powell had to do a little extra, played 31 minutes in this game, but was absolutely amazing. Plus, the defense from Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock taking over when Maxi Kleber couldn't be there, being the one that was guarding Giannis straight up, being the one that was trying to help on the other end. They were awesome. The Mavs rotation was great. They did just enough to beat the Bucks, and now the Mavs have another win against one of the top teams in the NBA, and they're starting to feel good, hopefully getting that third seed.
Two teams who may face off in the play-in tournament faced off on Sunday. The Los Angeles Clippers already locked into that play-in tournament. The Pelicans couldn't clinch their spot in LA last night. Locked On Clippers and Pelicans have the recap.
What is going on, Clips fans? Chuck Mockler here, one half of the hosting duo over at Locked On Clippers, coming at you after the Clips clinch the 8th seed. They have a spot in the play-in tournament, one game, and they will move on if they get past that. It was great to see they finally get a win over the New Orleans Pelicans this year, 119-100. Marcus Morris with an efficient 22 points. Ivica Zubac with a very much needed monstrous double-double against Valanciunas, which was great to see. Reggie Jackson handed out 10 assists. Paul George made his threes. The process looked good. The Clippers also might be getting Norm Powell back. He participated in a rigorous pregame shoot-around. The vibes are great, and it's really nice to see the Clippers peaking at the right time. They were great on both ends in this one. Let's hope the good vibes continue against Phoenix.
The play-in tournament will have to wait for the New Orleans Pelicans after a night to forget against the Los Angeles Clippers. I'm Jake Madison, host of Locked On Pelicans and Locked On NBA. The Pels had a chance to clinch a spot in the play-in tournament with a win over the Clippers, but it wasn't their night, falling 119-100. It's just one of those games. The Clippers were hot all night long, shooting 47% from deep, making 21 threes. They took control of this game midway through the second quarter, and the Pels just never put it together to make a run or make the Clippers sweat at all. The Pels' magic number is still 1, so they can clinch a spot in the play-in tournament with a win Tuesday against the Kings or any Lakers loss. But now they feel a bit of pressure with the Spurs just one game behind them for the 9th seed, and the Spurs have the tiebreaker. So can the Pelicans get in, and is there a chance that Zion Williamson might play? I'm covering it all over at the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
The Detroit Pistons are on a winning streak at a time that really doesn't help them all that much. Locked On Pistons recaps Detroit's takedown in Indiana.
The Detroit Pistons may not be the worst team in the NBA when it comes to basketball itself, actually on the court. But I can tell you guys what they're absolutely the worst team in the NBA at doing, and that is at tanking. They beat the Indiana Pacers again today, extending their winning streak to 3. At the end of the season, they literally have had the winning streak at the worst possible time. Now, yes, 82-game season, it all counts the same at the end of the year, yada, yada, yada. But obviously, this is not what fans really wanted to see. And I can't even really get mad at Dwayne Casey or anyone about it because Killian Hayes only played 22 minutes. Isaiah Stewart, 22 minutes. Sadiq Bey, 22 minutes. I mean, he dropped 31 in those 22 minutes. can't really help that he just turned into Klay Thompson first. I thought he was going to break this three-point record in the first quarter when he had 6 threes made his first 6 shots. But the Pistons were led by Braxton Key, who was in the G League. They were led by Frank Jackson, Isaiah Livers, and not to mention a dude that they had literally just signed the same day, like 5 hours before, in Carson Edwards. Like, that dude was just signed, came and played 5 hours later, and played 30 minutes for them. And they still beat the Indiana Pacers. I don't know if you guys should be mad at the Pistons. Maybe you guys should go get mad at the Pacers. Go to their team site, because that's on them. Either way, we'll talk about this on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
Indiana seems to fully be embracing the tank at this point. They lost to the Pistons at home on Sunday. Our Locked On Pacers host still saw some good performances in the defeat.
The tank rolls on for the Pacers as they lose to the Detroit Pistons at home, 121-117. The Pistons' best player, Sadiq Bey, at 31 points, didn't even play half the game. Cade Cunningham, their usual best player, didn't play at all. And yet the Pistons still won because they shot lights out from 3 and were able to take down the Pacers in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Detroit ends up shooting over 50% from 3. And on the Pacers side, Tyrese Haliburton, unbelievable performance. 19 points, 17 assists, 9 rebounds, no turnovers. The first 17 assists, 0 turnover game in the NBA since 2018 when LeBron James did it. The 12th since 2000. He was awesome. They got some good performances from O'Shea Brissett, but he healed, scored 19 points, but they were not able to defend well enough ultimately to get it done. But bright side, silver lining for the Pacers, this loss locked them in to, at worst, top 6 lottery odds, which means the Pacers will be picking inside the top 10 for just the 3rd time since the 1980s. And if they get below the 10th pick, it'll be the first time picking below 10 since the 1980s in general. So ultimately a good loss for the Pacers. They had some good performances, but Detroit got it done thanks to some hot shooting. We'll break that all down in more detail and more on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
The Cleveland Cavaliers were at one point this season one of the best teams in the East, but after a loss at home last night, they will almost certainly be headed for that play-in tournament. Locked On Cavs tells you how Cleveland lost to Philly last night and lost its ground in the East.
Hey there everyone, Evan Damerl here, co-host of Locked On Cavs, with the Locked On Now takeaway after the Cleveland Cavaliers 112-108 loss to the Philadelphia 76ers on Sunday night at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. With this loss to Philly, Cleveland is more or less locked into the play-in tournament at this point, with only a game ahead of the Atlanta Hawks for the 8th seed, and they could realistically end up in the 10th seed as well if they lose out for the remainder of the season. I asked JB Bickerstaff post-game if the plan was to whether or not rest some of his key players down the stretch to have them fully healthy for the playoffs, and he said that's not the plan at all. It's kind of an interesting development, and we'll have to kind of see how this goes down the stretch. Hear about this and more on tomorrow's Locked On Cavs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
The New York Knicks beat up on the Orlando Magic last night with a lot of the Orlando's young talent out of the lineup. Locked On Knicks and Magic are both here to give you details post-game.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Gavin Shaw of the Locked On Knicks podcast, following a 118-88 win for the New York Knicks over what was essentially the Orlando Magic's version of a G League team. They were without Jonathan Isaac, of course, no Franz Wagner, no Jalen Suggs. Cole Anthony went out after about 3 minutes. Wendell Carter was injured. Basically, what I'm saying is the Knicks should have won by this score. And there were plenty of highlights in this game. Obi Toppin dropped a career-high 20 points for the 2nd straight night. He is ending the season on an absolute tear. Emmanuel quickly became the 2nd youngest Knick to ever record a triple-double with a 20, 10, and 10 game. RJ Barrett was super-duper efficient. Now is the time, and you know this if you've seen these before, where I can pick some issues, or pick some nits rather, some pretty big nits, maybe not quite nits, with Tom Thibodeau. Alec Burks, 33 minutes in this game. Deuce McBride, only 11. Can I just ask why? The season is over for the New York Knicks. You're playing a team that you would beat regardless. McBride has torn up the G League this year. Why not give him a chance to do it against the Magic's version of that kind of team? And just, again, young player, part of your future. See what you have in that guy versus an Alec Burks, who played great and is a good player, but you real need to play him in a game like this, outside of maintaining his interest in this season, which only has a couple of games left and is already over. So yeah, that was pretty typical of Tibbs over the last couple weeks and months, and it was a great win outside of that. So for now, Gavin Shaw, Locked On Knicks.
3 more games to go. I mean, Markelle Fultz nearly played 22 minutes tonight. That was good. 3 more games to go. The New York Knicks beat the Orlando Magic 118-88. That's all that needs to be said. 3 more games to go.
Coming up, Kyle Lowry gets the win in his return to Toronto. This is Locked On Now NBA. This edition of Locked On Now is brought to you by BetOnline, the perfect place for all of your online sports gambling needs. Of course, the NBA playoffs are right around the corner. We're in the middle of the national championship for college basketball, and the Masters is upon us as well. So you want to head over to betonline.net to get all your bets in. Welcome back to Locked On Now NBA. I'm Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. We're going to continue our recap of last night around the league.
Let's go around the league.
Kyle Lowry made his return to Toronto for the first time since leaving the Raptors, and the Heat ended up winning the reunion to give themselves some breathing room as the East's top seed. Locked On Heat and Raptors recap the return of Lowry to the place he called home for 9 years.
Without Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker, Eric Spoelstra, and others, the Miami Heat beat the Raptors 114-109 on Kyle Lowry's special night. I'm Wes Goldberg with Locked On Heat. And in Kyle Lowry's first game back in Toronto since signing with the Heat last summer, the Heat came back from 13 points down and used a big 34-23 third quarter powered by Max Strus and Tyler Hero to get this win. The Heat are now 2 games up for the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference with 3 games left in their regular season. But this isn't to overlook this occasion for Kyle Lowry. Toronto gave him a great tribute before the game, and Lowry spoke to media wearing his 2019 championship ring. They also made sure to let the media know that his priority was getting the win, and Lowry and the Heat walk away Sunday night with an important one, and they've now won 4 straight after having previously lost 4 straight. Mentioned at the top there that Eric Spoelstra was out. He had been entered into health and safety protocols, not expected to have an extended absence for Miami. For more on the game, tune into Locked On Heat on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts.
The Raptors lose as Kyle Lowry returns. Sean Woodley here from Locked On Raptors to break down the Toronto Raptors 114-109 loss to the Miami Heat on Sunday night in Toronto. And look, the Raptors lost this game. Their defense kind of lost its mojo. It had been really, really good of late. They did not have OG Anunoby tonight. He was out with a thigh contusion, and they lost because they got burned on the back end of some over-aggressive rotations, and they gave up 18 of 38 from downtown, that is. Victor Oladipo goes 6 of 9 from 3. Max Strus goes 7 of 9 from 3. That's why the Raptors lost. But really the takeaway from this one has nothing to do with the game itself. This was a celebration of what the Raptors and Kyle Lowry accomplished with one another over 9 years of Lowry being in Toronto. And really, the thing to take away from this one is that the Raptors got this star departure right. This is not a thing they've done well in the past. From Vince Carter, Chris Bosh, DeMar DeRozan, Damon Stoudemire, they have never really figured out how to amicably part ways with their star players. And they've done that with Kyle Lowry, and the result of their careful plotting and the sort of prioritization of Kyle Lowry's happiness above all else as they were working towards moving on from him over the last year or so, it really did lead to what we saw tonight, which was a beautiful tribute, nearly 3 minutes of a standing ovation for Kyle Lowry as he stood at center court with the Raptors faithful chanting down to him. It was just a wonderful, unforgettable night, and as much as the Raptors lost, it doesn't actually really hurt them that much. The Cavaliers lost earlier. It seems like the Raptors are pretty safe. Their magic number is just 2 now to clinch a top 6 seed in the Eastern Conference, and they still have the inside track at the 5 seed considering the strength of schedule for both them and the Chicago Bulls down the stretch, who are both 45 and 33. So yeah, they lost, but ultimately this was Kyle Lowry's night, and it was as beautiful and as wonderful as you could have possibly expected for it to be. If you're a Raptors fan, I'll have more broken down about this on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Raptors. Be sure to tune in.
The Minnesota Timberwolves almost blew a red-hot start against the Rockets, but they were able to find their footing late to hold off Houston in the end. Locked On Wolves has the details from a big scoring night from Anthony Edwards in the win.
Ben Beacon with Locked On Wolves here. The Timberwolves beat the Houston Rockets by 7 on Sunday in a game that Minnesota controlled for much of it. They led by as many as 27. They had a massive first half. They dropped 80 in the first half of this game. But things got really sloppy in the second half. Karl Anthony Towns was awesome in the first and third quarters. Anthony Edwards had a big middle portion of the game. But the Wolves' defense was practically non-existent down the stretch. The offense had far too many turnovers and was inconsistent after a hot shooting start to the game. It was just very sloppy down the stretch. And things got way too close. They got too close for comfort. It was into single digits with just a couple minutes to play, but the Wolves were able to hang on late. Overall for the game, Anthony Edwards had 33 points. Karl Anthony Towns had 28, 11, and 5. And D'Angelo Russell had 22 and 9 himself. It was a good game for the Timberwolves' big three. A little bit more quiet from the supporting cast, at least in the second half of this one. We're going to break down what happened in the game, why things got so sloppy in the second half, and what we can take away from this thing that's positive. Even though it was only a 7-point win against one of the league's worst teams, there are some positives to take away. We're going to break it all down on the post-game podcast. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves.
The Rockets are used to the losses by now this season, so Rockets fans are more focused on the big nights from a pair of rookies who have Houston fans looking forward to what's to come for this team.
Another game, another night where Rafael Stone continues to prove that he hit on every single pick for the Houston Rockets in this past year's NBA draft. What's up? This is Jackson Gatlin from over at Locked On Rockets. The Rockets may have lost yet another game, but this is a season about development, about the youth, about the future of this Houston Rockets team, and the future is so very bright here in Houston. Jalen Green, the first rookie since Allen Iverson to score 30-plus points in 4 consecutive games, drops a 30-piece against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And Josh Christopher off the bench, 30 points in 30 minutes, scored 19 of them in the fourth quarter as the Rockets mounted a late comeback rally against the Timberwolves. The first pair of rookies in NBA history to have 30-point games in the same evening. Not only that, Steven Silas absolutely irate at the just frankly horrendous officiating in this game between the Rockets and Timberwolves, finds himself ejected. Steven Silas, who is usually smiling, happy, well-metered, and composed on the sideline, is ejected from this game, standing up for his Rockets team and his young Rockets players. We're going to break it all down for you coming up over at Locked On Rockets.
The Oklahoma City Thunder pulled off one of the biggest upsets of the season by taking down the number 1 ranked team in the league, the Suns. The Suns have the best record for a reason. None of that mattered, though, in OKC last night, and Locked On Thunder tells you why.
I'm Rylan Stiles, host of the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. The Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Phoenix Suns as Aleksej Pokusevski records his first career triple-double. Poku, playing more of the point guard role today, really settled in the second half. Is Point Poku sustainable moving forward, or was this just a bad game that hurt the Thunder in their tankathon chase? Find out on today's Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.
The Sacramento Kings officially out of the playoffs after they lost last night to the Warriors, and it means Sacramento holds a record that no team really wants. Locked On Kings explains.
16 straight seasons the Sacramento Kings have missed the playoffs. That's an NBA record. The wrong kind of record, but the only record seemingly the Sacramento Kings have any chance of holding for the rest of time. Kings fall to the Golden State Warriors in a game where they were down by as many as 24, somehow brought it to within 7 with a weird run in the fourth quarter, and then the Warriors slammed the door shut. Mercifully, the Kings only have 3 games remaining this season, and maybe now that they're eliminated from the playoffs, associate head coach Alvin Gentry will finally just throw the young players in there, give them a bunch of minutes, and just let things end how they should end. Boy, it's been a tough season to say the absolute least, and the worst part is, as great as it is to have Domantas Sabonis here in Sacramento, and as hopeful as we are for the future, there's a very good chance that this playoff streak could hit 17 or 18. Or 19, or 20, or 21, or 22.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Now NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you check out Locked On NBA and, of course, your team's Locked On podcast. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Now.